The John Muir Trail is one of the classic American hikes. Most of the real epic hikes are really too long for me to do. The John Muir Trail is 220 miles, which means you can do it 10 miles a day in about 3 weeks. I first learned about the John Muir Trail about 4 years ago, the first time we were up at the Mount Whitney portal. And as I was coming out of the portal store, I came across somebody who was sitting on a bench outside and asked them if they'd done Mount Whitney, and they said that they had just completed the John Muir Trail, and they told me what it was. And I remember thinking at the time, boy, I'd really like to do that. I hadn't done any long distance hiking in years. I'd done mainly day hikes and some Grand Canyon 3 or 4 night trips. I spent the next couple of years preparing for the hike. Did a couple of week-long Sierra backpacks over part of the John Muir Trail, summited Mount Whitney twice, and did a dress rehearsal down the last 50 miles just to make sure that I'd be able to do this trail. I knew I was going to be ready this year. I didn't want to delay it past 2014 because at my age, I'm 61, you never know. You start off the hike in Yosemite Valley, down in an area called Happy Isles. The first day is really tough because you hike up to the trail junction where you would normally branch off for Half Dome. Once you've completed that first day, you're halfway to Tuolumne Meadows. Tuolumne Meadows is a campground for car campers. It has a little general store up there and it has a little coffee shop. And we had one of the best hamburgers I have ever had in my life. The hike over to Red's Meadow is gorgeous. It's one of the sections of the trail that I want to go back and hike again sometime. Unfortunately, when we were hiking it, there were forest fires burning, one over by Mammoth Lakes, another one in another part of Yosemite. There was a lot of smoke. And even with the smoke from the forest fires, it was so gorgeous. We passed so many mountain streams with rushing water, waterfalls, cascades, rock palisades. It was absolutely amazing. And the last thing that you come to before you get to Red's Meadow is you get to a national monument area called Devil's Postpile. And it's really a rock formation. And in front of some fairly large rocks, it looks like someone took some steel rails from a railroad and tried to drive them into the ground end first. So Red's Meadow was another car camping area, and it's got what they call a mountain resort, which is really, again, it's a general store, it's a little coffee shop, and they have a few little tent cabins up there. But the coffee shop has the best double cheeseburgers.
Well, Red's Meadow was a drive-up supply. It has backpack campgrounds. It even has car camping campgrounds. You don't have to pack the fresh supplies in. You can drive them in, and that means you can take whatever you want, including some things the JMT thru hikers are not going to be able to have on the trail. One of David's favorite things is pineapple upside down cake. So I made pineapple upside down cake, packed it up, took it to Red's Meadow, and we passed it around after dinner by the fire.
Here's to friendships on the trail, everybody. It was when we left Red's Meadow that the rains really started. Most of the storms that we got between Red's Meadow and Muir Trail Ranch were monsoon storms. They'd start after lunch, they'd go to about sundown. So you get up in the morning, it would dawn bright and clear. We had a number of passes that we had to cross over, and I'd planned out the trip so that we would sleep at the bottom of passes, so that the first thing we would do in the morning when we got up is we would climb up to the top of a pass and go over. Passes, typically the toughest parts of the hike, so you do them while you're fresh. One of the most basic safety rules in the Sierras is you do not go over high passes in thunderstorms. There's a real risk of getting hit by lightning up there, and if you don't get hit by lightning, there's a real chance of hypothermia. You do the passes first thing in the morning so that if you do get monsoon storms, you get over the pass before the monsoon rolls in. And it was about like this up to Muir Trail Ranch. And the weather started clearing up the day we hiked into Muir Trail Ranch, which is just a little hole in the wall where hikers can get a resupply. They don't have a coffee shop. They don't really have a general store to speak of. We went down, got some water at Muir Trail Ranch. There's a backpackers campground up the mountain. And the nice thing about Muir Trail Ranch, there was a mineral hot springs where you could go soak.
Muir Trail Ranch is a major resupply point. It's about at the halfway point of the John Muir Trail. They have large-ish backpacking camps, and if you are through hiking or resupplying someone who's hiking, then you can stay there. If you go to Muir Trail Ranch on the resupply side, you take a 2-lane road up towards Florence Lake. The last 17 miles of this road is a 1-lane road. Then you can take the ferry to the Muir Trail Ranch Trail. You have about a 5-mile hike in to Muir Trail Ranch.
The day after we got our resupply, when we left Muir Trail Ranch, weather looked pretty good, but we had another monsoon that afternoon. It ended early, and we actually had a pretty nice sunset. We're keeping our fingers crossed that was it. 4:45 the next morning, I got awakened by rain, and that really concerned me. When it rains at 5 o'clock in the morning, that's not a monsoon, that's a frontal system moving in. Frontal system comes in, it can hang around for a couple of days. And that day, we were heading up to Muir Pass. We hiked in the rain up to the base of Muir Pass, camped at Muir Pass. The storm really hit us about 6:30. About 7:30, 7:45, the lightning flashes and the thunder were almost instantaneous, which meant the storm had come down off the pass and it was right on top of us. 6 o'clock the next morning, sunrise, another wave of the storm is coming in, and it's coming in over the pass. About 7:30, I noticed the clouds thinning out, noticed an occasional patch of blue, and I thought, okay, this is either just the edge of the storm and it's not going to hit us, or we've got some kind of break between the waves of the storm here. We pack up really quickly, get over the pass before the next wave of the storm hits. That's what we did. And right about the time I was headed over the top of the pass, I could hear the thunder coming in the distance. I could see some distant lightning, but got down over the pass, continued on. And about an hour and a half after that, saw an old Wrangler with a mule train. At this point, I'd taken off my poncho and I had it just sort of draped around my neck. And he said, well, you can put that away, son. You're not going to need that anymore. Storm's over for the day. And sure enough, it was. We had more passes to go over. At that point, we were doing a different 12,000-foot pass every single day. It stayed absolutely bright and blue.
The third resupply is spectacular. You really get a flavor of the John Muir Trail. This hike is about an 8-mile hike. Kearsarge Pass is 11,600 feet above sea level. Once you get to the top of the pass, it's beautiful. Looking down at Kearsarge Lakes, and then in the distance is Bullfrog Lake, which is a popular place for people from the John Muir Trail to meet resuppliers.
Once I headed back on the trail, it ended up just being an amazing day. I'd been worried about this particular day because this was a 9-mile hike that I had to do to get to the top of Forester Pass. It wasn't just a set of switchbacks for a mile or two. I was happy because I had hiked the same trail the year before. The year before, when I'd done the hike over Forester Pass, I'd taken 2 days to do it. And this time, I had set it up to be doing it in 1 day. I was counting on the fact that the trail would toughen me up enough where I would be able to do Forester Pass in 1 day. And that's exactly the way that it went. I started out at 6 o'clock in the morning. I got over Forester Pass at about 2:30 in the afternoon. When I got down to the other side of Forester Pass, I'd originally planned on camping at some lakes just below the pass. I decided to keep going. About 5 miles past there's a campground called Tyndall Creek. If it looks like there's another frontal system coming in, I'm probably going to have at least a day's notice. If I can get down to Tyndall Creek tonight, then tomorrow, instead of staying at Crabtree Junction, I can add 3 miles to the day, I can make it all the way over to Guitar Lake. In fact, that's what I ended up doing. Got up at Tyndall Creek, hiked over to Crabtree Junction. I'd asked Liza to get the weather forecast for me. Sure enough, if I got over to Guitar Lake a day early, then I'd be able to get up and down Whitney on a pretty clear day. But if I waited until my original summit day, there could be bad weather moving in the afternoon. So from Crabtree Junction, headed over to Guitar Lake and set up camp there. So the following morning, I started heading up toward Trail Crest on the switchbacks on the backside of Whitney at about 4:30, moseying along, enjoying myself, taking my time, letting people pass. And I finally got up to Trail Crest about 8 o'clock. I felt great. It is the best I have ever felt going up to Mount Whitney. We are at Trail Crest. This is where I came up from. So next I'm going to be heading up to the summit on the trail that you see ahead. Where I'm going is a long traverse over there. I don't have my backpack on. I've switched to a summit pack, so I'm not carrying any weight. The hike back to the summit from Trail Crest is a celebration. It's a celebration of having completed the John Muir Trail, which officially ends at the top of Mount Whitney. I'm at the summit of Mount Whitney, approaching the shelter at the top of the summit and the summit plaque just beyond it. The summit marks the official conclusion of the John Muir Trail, and you can see people up ahead signing the visitors register to memorialize the fact that they were here. I have run into so many friends that I've met over the trail in the last 3 weeks. It has literally been a party going up and down. Lots of people that I'll never forget. The friends that you make out here, it's almost like living in New York. It's a common experience in human misery at times, and just a shared joy at others. And it's an experience that's never forgotten.